What was your oh hell nah moment in a relationship that made you leave? I laugh when I think of this moment now. I was with my ex for almost 6 years. It was an okay relationship. I left him because he couldn't communicate with me. After 6 years, I felt like we were just friends who lived together. I tried to talk about it, but it got the normal I don't know or I don't know what to say. Fight me. Anything. I screamed and yelled as I tried to fight for a relationship. I wanted to spend my life with this person, and they couldn't even answer past I don't know. If they couldn't fight, neither would I. I packed my stuff up then and there, grabbed my cats, and left. After a few months, he texts me out of the blue. We talk. It's the best talk we had over the 6 years we were together. It was beautiful, amazing, everything I wanted from him. We continued chatting, talking, for about a month. He comes over to my new apartment to watch E3. I noticed all day he seemed distant and distracted. We'd been talking so well, I thought he could get it out, so I ask, I pry, I pull. Nothing. Just, I don't know. And the game I've been waiting for, Death Stranding, comes up. I'm hooting and hollering. So excited just to learn about this game, and he knows it. I've been talking about it for weeks. As soon as it starts, I finally hear from him. I think I'm ready to talk about what's bothering me. My head snaps over to him. I pause the show. In that second, I think to myself, Cathabit, listen to yourself. He knows how excited you are. He sees you on the edge of your seat. You've been trying to talk to him all day and night, and finally when he sees you at your happiest, then is the perfect moment to talk? Do you want your life to be like this forever? Your own happiness doesn't matter? When he's ready, you have to drop everything and go? No, you're better than this. You don't need to pull every single conversation out of him. I guess he just sat there and read my face, so when I open my mouth, all I say is, can this wait 20 minutes? You know how excited I am. I just want to give you my undivided attention. He then snorted at me and said, you never want to listen to what I have to say. That's it. That snapped my brain in half. I tell him, that's such freaking BS. Get out of my home. We'll never be more than friends. I see that now. Get out. And he left. Haven't spoken to him since. He called over a friend and we spent all night together while he bought me ice cream and listened to me complain. I broke up a 6-year relationship over Death Stranding. Turns out I don't even like the game. Didn't even play it. Story 2. I learned what gaslighting was. My partner of 7 years who had bought a house and were making wedding plans, but looking back with clarity, things were not good. Since I was just a boy and she was a woman in tune with her emotions, I was wrong anytime I was feeling anything she didn't like. She would get really angry during fights, with balled fists and gritted teeth, and swear to me that she wasn't upset. She couldn't take responsibility for her nonverbal communication, but I had to believe her. Anytime our realities and truths came into conflict, hers always won out and left me questioning my own. What was wrong with me that I was falsely imagining she was upset at me? Why couldn't I trust words that she was saying? What's wrong with me? Lockdown came, and that was a great time to do a deep dive into therapy. I learned all about self-compassion, how to respect yourself, and how to validate your own realities, truths, and emotions. I put this into practice and was gone less than a year later. The final straw was a real hectic day. I got home from work and the basement had flooded. Crap. Normally this is something that would be overwhelming and terrifying and really, really bad, but I handled it really well. I knew she was on her drive home from work, so I didn't bother her because she'd get stressed and driving isn't the time for that. When she got home, she was livid I didn't tell her. Okay, fair enough. Meanwhile, I calmly and coolly coordinated all that needed to be done, called my handy friends to figure out what to do, got a shop vac from a relative, and got to it. It was a stressful emergency situation that I'd never dealt with before, so I was totally winging it and making it up as we went. I handled it with such grace and calmness that I was really proud of myself. She was not. She found every reason to rip into me and tell me I did things wrong. I didn't keep her in the loop. For a plan I was making up as we went, I was giving her jobs to do, and she hates being told what to do. It was an emergency, and she asked what to do to help. I didn't take her suggestions. She wanted to call someone to get a shop vac when I already had one on the way. I listened to her and started to internalize it. What a screw-up I was. I should have done it entirely differently. She's mad, and she's right. I just got really hard on myself, or as hard as she was on me. But then when I went to do my daily journal, I realized the whole thing was messed up. I did something good, something I was proud of, and she wanted to take that away from me for some self-centered BS reasons. I was working on loving myself and treating myself with respect. I wasn't going to let her take such a big win away from me for purely selfish reasons. I slept on the couch that night, and that was the beginning of the end. Story 3. This just happened this past weekend. Although there have been years of verbal, emotional cruelty and destroying things around the house, this was it. We had a small tiff about our 5-year-old wearing pants versus shorts. I didn't like that I had my own opinion. He became so enraged that he threw his freshly made cup of coffee at me while I held our 8-month-old infant. My entire shirt was drenched in hot coffee. Luckily, none hit my daughter as she was on my hip. My 3-year-old watched as this happened. Why did Daddy throw the cup at you? Hell no. I already had a lawyer set up and I'm putting down the money tomorrow to seal the deal. Story 4. I'd been with my oppressor for 2 years. He lied to me about two major things: being in the military, and then, eventually, having liver disease, which was going to end him. Kept me confined in his country for a time and psychologically mistreated and controlled me. He threatened to come over to my country and harm me the last couple of times I tried to leave, and I absolutely believed he would do it. Then lockdown hit. Flights were canceled between our countries, and I knew he couldn't get to me anymore and that it was finally the time I could get out safely. That Easter, I got a job in healthcare, started working on myself by going to therapy, and made my plans to leave. He still stalked me for 2 years after, but I believe the threat of legal action was what finally stopped the messages. I wouldn't be surprised if he is still monitoring me where he can, though. Story 5. We were together for almost 7 years. He didn't like drinking or partying and was always uncomfortable when people were intoxicated around him. I worked in an all-female environment, which I had no issue with. One of his friends from work started to come over for pizza with her boyfriend, which became a semi-regular thing. Then the invite swapped, but I wasn't invited because I had to stay home with our kid. He started to go out almost every week, which was a huge and sudden change in his previously antisocial behavior. Started hearing about this new woman at work, never previously mentioned until this point, who all of a sudden happened to be best friends with my boyfriend's friend. Turns out she was at these evenings too. He started staying out later and later. He stopped answering my messages altogether when he was at his friends' places and didn't come home until almost 5 a.m. Started taking a keener interest in physical appearance, began working out more and became really defensive and argumentative with me. At that point, I decided he was probably cheating on me, and I wasn't really willing to wait around and find out for certain one way or another. We broke up, and while he maintains that he never cheated on me, he's now married and has another 2 children with a best friend, and he started moving her stuff in the weekend I left. So you tell me if he cheated or not. Story 6. My ex always kept her ex-boyfriends around, and this had become an issue for me. I'd started insisting that your social circle cannot exclusively include people you have been intimate with or people who want to be intimate with you, especially in a long-distance relationship, so she had stopped talking to some of them. I was diagnosed with a clot in my brain a couple of weeks after this. As I was in the hospital bed, scared if I would make it, she was on video call, arguing with me and crying about how I'd isolated her and she was lonely. I later found out that she had been talking to them the whole time and just wanted to make me feel guilty so I would agree to them being around. It was one of the most manipulative things someone had done to me, and I could never look at her the same way. Story 7. I'd been in a relationship with this verbally cruel dude for 1.5 years, and we lived together. He had to wake up early, set an alarm, and then slept through it. I tried to wake him up gently, but he wouldn't budge, so I just got up and started my day. When the next alarm rang, he woke up and got angry with me because I didn't wake him up in time and he was going to be late. He was screaming and at some point called me a witch. My consciousness just blinked out for a moment, and when I next came to, I had slapped him hard enough to make his head turn. He, of course, went nuclear, threatened me, but had to leave for his appointment. After then, I'd been trying to be patient, understanding of his issues, and committing to help him work on them, but hell no, I didn't have to live like this. I called some friends, packed all my stuff, and left. Story 8. When my childhood cat passed away, I had him for 19 years. He was somewhere between 20 to 21, estimated since he was a rescue. I told my then boyfriend I just kind of needed some space to process and deal with it because, again, I had the cat for 19 freaking years. I grew up with him. He was my baby. Cue my ex bugging me constantly, on the daily, to do stuff with him. It was a new behavior, unfortunately. And of course, when I got annoyed and being bothered constantly and told him that, again, I needed time to process and come to terms with my cat's passing, he pulled some peak a-hole behavior and told me to let him know when I wanted to be part of the relationship again. This, in addition to the fact that he laughed at me when I said I cried in the store because something reminded me of my cat, and the fact that he was generally mentally and emotionally cruel our entire relationship anyway, just gave me the needed push to get out. I went off on him, ignored him for a week to gather my thoughts and process the loss of my cat, and then broke up with him and blocked him everywhere. Best decision ever. You don't realize how truly miserable someone's making you until you get away from it for a while. Story 9. Many years ago, I went to my now ex-girlfriend's home for the first time, and this small boy, one of 3 children she neglected to mention she had, grabbed my leg and started calling me daddy. No, thank you. I understand now that she was looking for some stability in her life and 4 children, and why she might not have brought up her financial and home situation right away. But at the same time, I don't think the way I was introduced to these things was ideal, and as an 18-year-old who was barely taking care of myself at the time, I noped out of there. I think about her occasionally and really do hope she and her kids ended up okay. Story 10. I bought a house a year ago and I've been remodeling it. In February, I quit my toxic job of 2.5 years and finally moved in. During our relationship, I paid all the bills, did all the grocery and errand runs, and all the cleaning. During that time, I lost every sense of self I had ever had. When I bought my house, he absolutely hated it. I was constantly bringing up that I went behind his back and did it. Even though when we met, I made it clear that the house I'm currently living in was the house I was going to buy. No questions, no hesitation. A few weeks ago, I was talking to him about how excited I was to turn a new leaf, to figure out who I was, how I was excited to stop being only a mother, an employee, a girlfriend, and a daughter, how I was excited to, for once, just be myself. I talked about how happy I am in my new job, how I was excited to build a future, to honestly just be a person, and finally, after 2.5 years, turn off autopilot, to focus on things I enjoy, pursue my hobbies. I could go on. After I said that, he was silent. I begged him to just converse with me. After about 3 minutes of his silence, he says he's going to end himself. How, somehow, from talking about my excitement, he took all of that as everything is his fault. I learned for the first time that my 2-year relationship was never a relationship, but rather just a long and drawn-out cycle of manipulation. In that moment, he knew he could no longer control me because I had finally gained some motivation to just live for myself. Story 11. I was in the kitchen preparing a home-cooked dinner of roast beef, freshly chopped mixed vegetables, from-scratch mashed potatoes, and gluten-free brownies for dessert. He came into the kitchen and startled me. I dropped a teaspoon. He got angry and called me a freaking inconsiderate idiot. His right hand went up as if to strike me. I froze, and my mind thought, I must get out of here. I don't know what was showing on my face, but he lowered his hand and pretended he hadn't said anything cruel as he looked around and said, "Looks delicious." I called a realtor the next morning, packed up while he was at meetings, and left at the end of the week. Story 12. New relationship. She had some type of weekend business conference she really wanted to attend, but she couldn't afford to go. I paid for her ticket and arranged for her to stay with a friend so she didn't have to pay for a hotel. I took care of her kid for the weekend. She called me and told me how much she was learning and how thankful she was that I helped her to go. On the last night of the conference, she told me she was going out with some people she met, but would call me when she got back. No call. This was pre-cell phone. It's now after midnight and I'm panicking. She's in a strange city and I have no idea how to get in touch with her. My poor friend who she was staying with got out of bed and went looking for her when I called him in a panic. He called me back about an hour later. I found her in a bar and she told me she was fine and didn't want to go back to his place. Never heard from her that night and I picked her up at the airport the next day. Her first words, "I'm surprised you're here." Story 13. This one is fairly mild, but my ex-fiancé and I got into an argument over how he treated me when I couldn't get tickets to an event he wanted to go to. They were sold out by the time I had the extra money to get them. It was a relatively mild argument, but I could feel myself getting heated. So I said I needed to step back and calm down. A few hours later, when I was ready to discuss things again, the first thing he said to me was, "So, do you have anything to say for yourself?" In the same tone you speak to a child who's done something wrong. I said, "Yeah, I'm done with this relationship," and walked away. There had been other red flags that were coming up ever since we got engaged. Basically, the minute I said yes, he had a major shift in attitude and opinion about how our life would be, even though we had discussed things prior. But yeah, being a 30-year-old adult with my own home and a career and being spoken to like I was a toddler that had gone sent to my room was a straw that broke the camel's back. Story 14. I had really low self-esteem in my first relationship and pretty much accepted anything as long as I could be with her. She refused to call me her boyfriend even after having me spend Christmas with her family. I'm pretty sure she cheated on me several times as well, and she used to have chats with my former best friend saying how I was fat and uninteresting. The last straw? Well, my dad passed away when I was like 1 or 2, so my grandpa was pretty much my fatherly figure growing up. He had a heart attack and passed away in the hospital suddenly after being stabilized. I was devastated and didn't know what to do. I just wanted to cry. I called and messaged her, and for the first time in like 3 years, I said I needed her. I just wanted a shoulder and some emotional support. She agreed to meet with me and never said anything like, "Sorry for your loss," or gave me any sort of comfort whatsoever. She even flipped through a book instead of maintaining eye contact. When she eventually saw my family, she did the exact same thing and didn't acknowledge that we were sad and mourning. The following day, my mother said she wanted to speak with me and said, "Look, I will never try to tell you what to do with your life or choose who you should be with, but I know how much you're hurting right now, and I think you deserve to be with someone who will support you through the bad times. And I'm not seeing that." And it clicked. I gave her an ultimatum the following week and asked what exactly she wanted for our relationship, and she just dumped my bum. It felt horrible for the first few hours and then extremely liberating. She texted me a week later wanting me to come back and saying everything would be as I had always dreamt of, to which I replied, "I'm sorry, but the only thing I dream of regarding you is never ever seeing or hearing from you again," and blocked her number. So yeah, it took me a damn lot to go hell nah, but I'm glad it happened. Story 15. I dated a girl several years back that I absolutely fell head over heels for. We were together for about a year. She was living at home with her mom while also working as a caregiver for the elderly in the same home. She always told me stories about how her mom wouldn't pay her enough to be able to save up any money, how she wanted to move out but couldn't afford it, and how her mom mistreated her. I busted my bum to figure out how to be able to get a place for us and get her out. While planning on how to move her out, she kept telling me that her mom didn't want me at the house, that she would call the cops if I showed up. I asked to talk to her mom to try to smooth things out and make it easier for her to leave. She gave me the runaround. "She's busy, she doesn't want to talk to you. Excuse after excuse. I finally said screw it and called her mom. She was as polite as could be. She said she had no idea my ex was planning to move out. She was super happy for her to finally get out. She explained what was going on with her pay situation. I was confused. I confronted my ex and she broke down, sobbing. Turns out, she had been lying to me about almost everything since about a month into our relationship. Her reason, she liked having someone stick up for her. So she kept lying and fabricating these stories and going deeper and deeper because she liked me being her white knight. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 16. My ex-fiancée was angry because I didn't agree with her opinion on some social drama that didn't even involve us directly. The evening continued to go downhill as every little thing sparked more fire and she got angrier and angrier. I was in the shower when I heard the door to our bedroom slam shut. Since the bathroom and bedroom were connected, I could hear her rummaging around through my nightstand where I kept a loaded pistol. Nothing ended up happening and she just closed the drawer and went back to the living room, but that entire shower, I felt like I was about to get hurt through the glass. I eventually locked the pistol in the safe and changed the code so she didn't know it. 1 month later, I ended a 5-year-long toxic and cruel relationship with her. Best move of my life. Flash forward 2.5 years later, and I'm happily soon to be married in a relationship. And my fiancé is amazing. We have our first daughter on the way, and I finally got my career started without my ex dragging me down emotionally. Story 17. She and I just got a house that we were renting to own. The same day we got the house, we were drinking to celebrate while moving in. Neighbor came to help us move in. He was a longtime friend of hers, apparently. I got sick and started retching in the bathroom and overheard her and him both talking, planning to have intimacy after I had passed out. I left the house and drove intoxicated all the way to my parents' house like an idiot. Honestly, it was worth the drive. That was 4 years ago, and I am now happily married to the woman of my dreams. Story 18. She had a habit of turning into a horrible person when intoxicated and had no apparent control over her having a couple of beers versus, I'll drink until I can't stand correctly. We were at a friend's birthday. She got hammered and started very publicly demanding, yelling, intimacy. As we left, she kept yelling at me in my car, then started scratching the windows as if she were a cat trying to escape. I dropped her at her place and left. The next day, I came back and broke up with her. She didn't remember anything she'd done the night before, but I did. The truth is, this was not the first time her behavior had been a problem. I tried to be understanding and patient, but she was not interested in addressing it. Story 19. My ex was taking our cat to the vet to see what was wrong with him. He hadn't been acting normal for about a week or so. I stayed home with his kids and took a nap. When I woke up from a nap, he was home. I asked what they said about the cat, and he told me he had him put down because he had cat leukemia and he'd already buried him in the backyard without telling anyone. He didn't call, text, or even come home to talk any of it over with me before making that decision. He didn't even let me or the kids say goodbye or have a little burial for him. That was our baby. He saw nothing wrong with what he did. That was the beginning of the end. Story 20. I'd been visiting him at his place in another state. I was setting in to go to sleep and he could no longer stop himself and started talking about politics. Holy crap. He completely exposed himself as a right-wing craze and stated how Trump was saving America. Yeah, no, I couldn't stay another second. I got out of bed, got dressed, and drove overnight through 2 whole states to get home and told him I was done. I wouldn't want to have anything to do with a dude who thought so highly of an individual who would happily put my half of the population in a box. Story 21. I was engaged to someone who was verbally cruel. One day he was screaming at me over something stupid, as usual, and called me a stupid witch about an inch from my face. For some reason it clicked in my brain. I didn't say a word, just turned and walked out of our shared apartment, drove to my mom's house, and ended the relationship. I don't know why those particular words on that particular day made me wake up, but they did. I've been happily married 20 years now, and sometimes wonder what my life would have been like if I didn't snap to it in that moment. Story 22. I was dating this guy from out of state who wasn't really nice to begin with, but I was going through a bad boy stage. One night while out at a bar in my city, I saw him and went home with him and his friend he was staying with. The next morning, I texted my friend telling her that I saw my guy and we slept together. She responded with, "Oh, crap," which was very odd. Not even 5 minutes later, I got a phone call from the schmuck who was just irate with me. He told me that I should go jump off a cliff for plane traffic, that he never wanted to see me again. I was pretty upset because I thought that I liked him. Come to find out, this a-hole was sleeping with my friend's roommate and he was mad that I told her about it the night before. The roommate called things off with him and he took it out on me. My friend and I had a falling out for a few years after that because I couldn't believe she didn't tell me about everything. She absolutely knew how I felt about him and then was having double dates with him and her roommate behind my back. Never knew what happened to him, but I'm sure he's out there cheating on his partner somewhere. Story 23. I was on vacation with my parents and best friend over a long weekend and had asked my boyfriend to check on my cats a few times, top off their food and water. Nothing involved. After a 7-hour drive, I called him when we got to the destination. This was in 1998. None of us had cell phones yet. Me. We're in location. Drive is easy. How are you? How are the cats? Boyfriend? Fine. Cats won't come near me. Me. That's okay, don't, boyfriend. So I was reading your diary. Why did you say XYZ about me? I was 20 years old and I learned what it's like to legitimately see red, thanks to that schmuck. My best friend had to physically block me and take my keys away so I couldn't drive home and end him. To be clear, we had been together for over 2 years and I'd never told him I kept a diary. I lived at home with my parents. He would have to go through my room to find it. That was in July. I'd already RSVP'd to his sister's wedding in August and we were civil for that, but boy did I tear him a new one in the meantime. I knew I was truly well rid of him when I heard an anecdote about him from family friends at the wedding reception. Apparently, as a child, he liked to mess with their cats. Now, I'm a cat person. He was a dog person. That's fine, but tormenting animals and still finding it funny 15 years later? Not okay. Christ, he was an a-hole. In retrospect, racist and misogynistic, too. Story 24. We had been living together for over a year, and we were starting to have small fights over her constantly bringing sketchy people over to hang out with after work. One of her coworkers was involved in substances, and when I realized this, I told her he wasn't allowed back in her house. She got really upset, said that wouldn't work because she had already promised this guy that he could make substances in her bathtub next week, and that he would get really upset if she canceled. I told her I was breaking up with her and went to sleep at a friend's house. Luckily, we were on a month-to-month lease at that point, and the apartment was in my name. I went to the landlord the next morning and told him we would be moving out at the end of the week, and moved all my stuff out that afternoon. Found out later she got fixated to substances and started dating the guy. Story 25. I started seeing a girl and she had a baby kitten. I was at her place and she was sweeping up. There was a little bit of fur or trash or whatever in the middle of the floor. The sweet little kitty was just playing with it softly and innocently. She yelled at the cat to stop, kind of giggled. I thought she was playing around. Then it kept playing and she just started screaming at this little baby kitty. Seriously, like mad as hell. I was disgusted that someone could yell at something so innocent and precious. It broke my heart. I left that day and never saw her again. In retrospect, I should have broken in when she wasn't home and taken the cat. Story 26. I dated a guy for 9 months. I met him online. One thing I was crystal clear about in my profile was no kids from prior relationships. I didn't have kids at the time and 100% did not want to be involved with anyone who had children. So I meet John and we start dating. He's single, never married. He talks about his family, parents, sisters, siblings, constantly. No reason to think anything is amiss. Well, the holidays rolled around and while I knew he was spending Christmas with his parents who lived out of state, I figured we could do something for NYE. So I invited him to my sister's house for NYE. He declines, saying he'll be out of town for a few weeks over the holidays. I say, I thought you were only going to your parents for a few days at Christmas. He said, Lilacs, I have something important to tell you. Long story short, he had a son, whom he never told me about for 9 months. We was going to visit over the holidays. The son lived in the same state as his parents, a plane ride away. It was disturbing to me, not only because he lied to me about such a major thing, I was pretty damn cavalier about it, but he also hadn't seen his son during that time. That was the end of the relationship. The whole debacle spoke to this guy's character and not in a good way. Bye-bye. Story 27. We dated for about a year and just grew apart, then simply broke up. No big deal, no big arguments, we just stopped seeing each other. About 3 months later, I thought it might be a good idea to maybe go out with her again. Just dinner and a movie, nothing special. I called her and she enthusiastically agreed. As we're driving around deciding on which restaurant to go to, catching up on the last few months, she stated that she was really happy I called because, in her words, I was worrying about where I would find another white boyfriend. I then changed her plans, got Burger King for the both of us, and dropped her off at her house. I never called her or heard from her again. Story 28. We had been dating for 4 months, getting on well, having a good time. We were planning on a vacation together, but while potting some houseplants at my place, we had a minor disagreement. So dumb. After some very low-level arguing, her response was to give me the silent treatment. Seriously, she refused to talk, respond to anything. And I mean unrelated to the disagreement. It was all so childish. I broke up with her that day. She couldn't believe it when I said I was not going to accept the style of conflict resolution in a relationship. She begged me to stay, saying we should be able to work on things. I said, you're a 40-year-old grown woman, and I wasn't going to take on the task of fixing her. She pestered me after that. Most memorably, when I was on the first date with someone new, she called me 70 times that day. Pretty sure I dodged a bullet. Story 29. I'd only been seeing this guy for a month, and to be fair, he had already shown a few red flags, but I let them slide. I was tight on money at the time, but he insisted he wanted me to cook for him since I'd mentioned I'm a really good cook. We planned, and he agreed for him to come over around 4 p.m. We'd eat dinner at 5, and then we'd go to a movie. I made stuffed shells with my family's recipe red sauce and meatballs, about a $70 grocery store haul. I texted him around noon to confirm he was still coming over, and he left me on red. I texted him again an hour later, and I was left on red again. After that, I had to run to the mall to pick up some things I had ordered to a store and had posted some items I saw at the mall in my Snapchat story. Snapchat lets you view who's looking at your story, and it was like 3 to 3:30-ish when I saw that he had viewed my entire story, but didn't answer any of my text messages. I was fed up and texted him he was uninvited to my house for dinner and I wasn't interested in seeing a guy who couldn't even bother to text me if he was still coming over or not, but had time to view my stories in social media. He ended up texting me 2 hours later, claiming he was spending time with family and it would have been rude to text me when he was with them. I pointed out he was on social media looking at my story while spending time with his family. Why wasn't that considered rude? He kept ignoring my valid point and I blocked him and everything. And honestly, I was more annoyed that he insisted I cook for him this $70 meal when I was tight on funds than being stood up. But my stuffed shells and sauce came out delicious. I brought some to my parents who were very grateful for the meal and I froze the rest for future meals. Story 30. When he kept pressuring me to have intimacy after I got a UTI. I don't know about the next woman, but UTIs are not fun. Then he went on to say that I didn't love him because we weren't having intimacy 2 to 3 times a week. After I recovered from that, my time of the month started and I proceeded to not want to have intimacy. He, on the other hand, thought I was lying for some odd reason and tried to make me feel like crap. As soon as he discovered that yes, in fact, I was bleeding a storm down there, he felt that he was entitled to a whistle. I calmly explained to him that no, he was not, and I wasn't in the mood since I was also experiencing bad symptoms, headaches or low back pain. He was not having it and decided the best option for him was to start a fight with me, saying how he had been unsatisfied for days and how it was my job to satisfy him. I told him that I understood that we haven't been doing anything lately, but also understand that I'm human and have been going through a UTI and now my time of the month. He didn't seem to understand that and insisted that my sole role as a girlfriend was to please him. I ended the relationship shortly after a string of moments of him gaslighting me. Looking back, it was for the best. I couldn't put up with that anymore. My mental state is so much better since then. Story 31. I'm a Pisces. You knew that when you got into a relationship with me. If I push you away, it's because of my star sign, but if you keep going, you might get me all to yourself. In an exclusive relationship, this sounded suspicious as hell to throw at me, and I found out she had 2 other spiritual connections on Snapchat with more agreeable star signs. Her horoscope said so. Screw that. I'm done. I washed my hands of it and never want to hear the term horoscope or star sign again. I didn't block her and got a message 6 months later from her saying she messed up our pure and sweet relationship and could we try again. I found out she lost her job and when the other Pisces dumped her like a stack of bricks, she moved back in with her parents. She was looking to start something to move in ASAP. She had mentioned something about maybe kids, and she had been adamantly against kids even if we ended up married, and I had said how important it is to me. Once she said that, I realized the trap and ghosted her after telling her how I don't have that much respect for myself, but more than that. Story 32. For my first ex, it started when he'd critique every little thing I ate. This led me to my R phase where I'd only eat 1 orange all day and work out for 3 hours. I dropped down to 112 pounds and he still wasn't happy, so I just left and recovered. For my last ex, I was looking at his computer while he was in the room. I wasn't doing this secretly. I was about to click on a folder when he grabbed my arm and forcefully pulled me away. I know he regretted it, but I knew that would be the start of something worse. So I ended it a week later. He turned into a whole incel, and now he's married and likes corn on Twitter. What a winner. Story 33. I was dating a guy while I was in college. Had a 5-year-old son from a girlfriend who passed away right after the birth. We were snuggling post-intimacy, maybe about 5 months into the relationship. He turns to me and goes, in one breath, I talked to my mom today. Her cancer is back. I'm going back to Phoenix to take care of her. You should drop out and come too. We'll get married and you can adopt son's name. My mom's going to need help around the house and getting to doctor's appointments. I literally crawled into my clothes and out the door, maintaining eye contact as I got dressed and while holding my shoes to my chest. I just babbled some excuse about having an early class. I rode my bike back to my dorm without even putting my shoes on while it was raining. Story 34. In university, I was in a relationship with a woman who almost certainly had undiagnosed borderline personality disorder. No, I'm not being sexist. All the signs are there. I could mostly deal with being the best thing ever one moment and then the scum of the earth the next. The constant arguments over absolutely nothing at all. The extreme emotions and the persistent threats if our relationship were to end. What I couldn't deal with was being told I had an inappropriate relationship with my mother because I speak to her 2 to 3 times a week. I'm close to my mom. She practically raised me single-handed. What a cruel thing to say. I ditched her that very instant. Story 35. 7 hours before I had a big test, she wanted to argue. There's no not arguing with her. If you stayed quiet, she kept going. If you disagreed, she kept going. If you took her side, you were lying. 2 hours into the fight, I tried to ignore her and go to bed. She told me to admit we're through. Might this be a way out? I said yes. She started questioning if I was serious, so I had to lay it out. Yes, we're done. I'm sick of this. We're done. We're over. You're moving. We're done. Now go pretend to sleep on the couch for 15 minutes before you come back in here and yell more about how I didn't come rescue you from the couch. Yes, I know you that well and I'm sick of all your BS. Go sleep in your freaking car. I don't care. We are 100% done. I'm going to sleep before you ruin my finals tomorrow. We are done. Story 36. I was a stay-at-home mom for a year. The relationship was crap. It really was, but we stuck together because we had the baby. He spent less than half of our son's first year with us because of deployments, and when he was home, he was kind of a deer in headlights and didn't know what to do with him, just defaulting to passing him to me. Shortly after he left the military, the baby slipped on water from me washing the dishes and tumbled. He was fine, no biggie. My partner then had the nerve to tell me I was a bad mom. I picked the baby up and walked. We're now very awesome, healthy co-parents, and I'm happy he's who I had a baby with because I hear horror stories all the time. He was a crappy husband, but he was a great dad once he was forced to grow up and learn how to dad. Story 37. My ex had been in a mental decline due to depression that I had enabled. It took me a long time to see it. She was at my apartment for months and months to deal with her stuff. She didn't actively do anything to try to improve, which is an enormous task, but I wasn't in any state to properly help that. She stopped doing anything and just became angry and depressed. The last straw before we broke up was her arguing with me, and she said, "My friend and mom keep asking why I'm with you. I don't have any more excuses to tell them. I'm not going to make one up, so you tell me one." At that point, I was completely supporting her and taking care of work, the apartment, my school, and her all together. At that moment, I realized I was done. She ended up moving back with her family, which she said she couldn't do, but she was doing well after a while. She wanted to rekindle it a few months later after getting help from the right people, but I wasn't ready, and I don't regret it. I wish her well. Story 38. I had a crazy ex. She was pretty attractive, but also really crazy. One day I was sleeping with her in her room, and then I suddenly woke up because I felt some iron thing hitting my head. It was incredibly painful, by the way. I immediately realized she had thrown something at me. I was really mad and started screaming really loud. I almost wanted to knock her out, and I'm someone who has never hit a girl before. Eventually, in the middle of the night, I made the decision that it was better to leave right away before I hurt her. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're gonna love this. Catch you in that video.